I also couldn't help but notice that there was some bananas chilling up there. What are the bananas for?
Hey everybody, welcome back to Inside Gaming. I hope you're having a safe and wonderful Sunday. It's me again, coming out of my cage. I've been doing just decent. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about a very important piece in our favorite puzzles. I'm sure you read the title. We're talking about sound design. While we all look at video games on a surface level, how it looks, how it feels to play, kinetic motions, and lifelike physics, all these are nice, but when it comes to modern day video games, we like to see how technology advances and how far devs can push the boundaries to make our games look as pretty as possible. I won't lie, I typically judge a game based off these things, but very seldom do I take the time to actually listen to how a game plays. Sound design in video games is extremely important for allowing a player to get fully immersed and have a really deep experience in this medium. Honestly, subtle nuances to let a player know they're doing something is just as important as any part of these works of art. Kind of like how in movies, you know, they use little stings and crescendos to make you feel like you're right there with Brad Affleck and Tom Segura, I don't know actors. Whether it's the clinks and clanks of a reload animation or the blips and blops of maneuvering through your inventory screen, these minuscule little cues really help people feel a sense of satisfaction through their actions. Animal Crossing New Horizons is filled with subtle sound cues that really solidify its already satisfying gameplay. For example, when you put a stereo down in your house, the direction of the music will change depending on where you move your camera, and if you have other items in your house like a television or an arcade machine, the music will be meshed in with the other sounds and make it sound very busy as opposed to a bunch of sound clips overlaid on top of each other. Animal Crossing is filled with ear candy. One of my favorite sound effects is from this tiny little espresso maker. As you can see, I have a cassette player here that I turned down specifically so I can hear the sounds of espresso being brewed. This is living. Before we move on from Animal Crossing, I want to touch on one more thing that you probably won't even notice unless you're wearing headphones. It's pretty cool. So if you're wearing headphones and you're in your inventory screen, the sound will actually pan from left to right, depending on where your cursor is. I know that's not a huge deal, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't sound so damn good. Alright, so to take a hard right turn from crossing animals to murdering someone in cold blood, Mortal Kombat has always had extremely punchy sounds. Obviously, it's a fighting game. Every fatality, every final blow, every little input you make from your stupid little fingers has an effect that is hard to miss. While most people focus on the gore, I'm sure playing it in silence probably won't have the same effect. It's the accompanying sloshes and cracks that really sell it. There's a really cool video from Vice about the sound design in Mortal Kombat that shows how they use fruits, vegetables, and nuts to make the effects. Usually ASMR makes me sick to my stomach, but this makes me appreciate the craft all the more. I'm sure some of you may be aware that I'm a huge Resident Evil fan, and I have been pretty much my whole life. The reason I've always been super into this franchise is because of its fantastic atmosphere. And when I say atmosphere, I'm not just talking about the fact it's spooky, but how the worlds they've created always felt lived in, with cool set pieces, even back in the pre-rendered backgrounds era. What really sold the level design was the sound design. Like how on your journey through the streets you hear the faint moans and groans of the undead. It really created a sense of unease and dread, immersing you in the world they've created. Small hints of whether you're in danger or not with something as subtle as footsteps, or when you have a moment of relief with the warming sounds of its safe room music, followed by warm reassurance of the typewriter sound effect. All these sounds work together so well all throughout their early titles that really solidified RE as one of the kings of sound design. A good example of this attention to detail would be back in RE2 and 3 during your time in the police station. You hear what sounds like a barricade being broken, and even though it happened often, it still freaked you out every time. And to kind of ride the horror train for a second, Left 4 Dead also had amazing sound design, both 1 and 2, and I'm sure we're all pretty acquainted with the cries of the witch. You can't see her right away, but you know she's there. Left 4 Dead had a real roller coaster way of doing things. You get a moment of silence, hearing nothing but reloads and commentary from the group, and then a few small moans and hisses from the undead, and then before you know it, you hear what sounds like a stampede before you get completely ambushed by zombies. I think this is what really adds to the chaotic nature of the game. Not only that, but there are plenty of musical cues to let you know what's coming, like when a jockey comes seemingly out of nowhere, it can go from natural ambiance of locusts and wind to noisy trumpets and gunshots, and that really helped the action feel seamless, and I like that. It was good. Alright, so I know that we opened with a life sim, but I gotta touch on this one because this game is the king of life sims, and it's had excellent sound design since inception. That's right, I'm talking about The Sims, more specifically the language that was created for the game known as Simlish. Simlish was created because the creator of the game, Will Wright, knew that the characters needed dialogue to make it as immersive as possible, but thought that using real-life languages such as English would cause the dialogue to be repetitive, and translating all that dialogue to different languages would be very expensive. So we had an idea to create a language that was made up of complete gibberish, but make it sound real enough that it could still convey emotion. You know, emotion, like
Children.
Oh, yes.
Funny enough, they even took real-world songs and had the artists translate them to Simlish, so the games could have a taste of the real world without breaking the established universe. Every time I think of Pressure by Paramore, my brain automatically translates it to Simlish because my brain hates me. Moving along to one of the best entries in a long-standing franchise with a history of excellent sound design, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I love this game so much, and that is partly due to the absolutely amazing sound design. The game is filled to the brim with causes and effects that bring light to subtle nuances in how the game sounds. For example, different terrains will sound different. Obviously, this isn't exactly the first time a game does that, but depending on which footwear you decide to put on, that changes the sounds you hear. A channel by the name of Scruffy actually detailed this as invisible design. He described it as something you'd notice in the start, but over time you start to take it for granted because it becomes normal. Not just on flat terrain, but the sound changes with inclines and declines to mimic real-life pitter-patter. Even something as small as carrying a sword and shield on your back adds this ruffling and clanking sounds that adds to the immersive experience, and actually makes you feel heavier and less stealthy. This kind of sets in stone what I was saying earlier about how sound design is just as important as how the game plays. This can actually in turn change how you play the game because you'll think twice before sneaking past enemies. A few other sound effects that make my ears perk up when I hear them are the different map sounds and shrine sounds. The best way to describe this game is audible comfort food. Playing it is such a cozy experience and best enjoyed with headphones, so you really appreciate everything it has to offer. Alright, gonna take another hard turn here and talk about skateboards. I gotta do it. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. It's a series that hasn't had the best time in recent years. Once a tyrant of the gaming industry, it has been taken over by the late Skate franchise, and after many failed attempts at a return, it seemed that the franchise was dead. And I think now is a good time to talk about it since we're getting remasters of 1 and 2 very soon, and those games had excellent sound design. While this game did rely heavily on how it actually played, since it was meant to mimic real-life skateboarding, the sounds that would back every trick and every ollie made you feel like you were actually doing something. Like the board scraping against the ground as you launch to an ollie, or the bottom of your deck grinding on a rail accompanied by a confirmation that you're doing a trick. It all flowed so seamlessly. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater has some of the most memorable sound effects in games, like the record scratches and trick sound effect. I don't know what it's called, but you know the one. Even something as upsetting as messing up a trick is followed by a satisfying sound of your body hitting the floor and the subsequent scraping of your board. It's all a nice little package. So this next one is kind of a package deal. I'd like to chalk it up more to a developer doing all the right things when it comes to sound design in their 3 major titles. We know Rockstar puts everything into their games. Blood, ball sweat, tears, and we know it comes at a cost of crunch, but I'm not here to dogpile on that. There's plenty of videos doing that. But their 3 heavy hitters, in my humble opinion, is GTA, Red Dead Redemption, and LA Noire. All 3 of these have something in common: excellent ambiance. When it comes to making an open world game, creating a believable world is half the battle. The other half is making it sound believable. Grand Theft Auto, typically being set in a booming metropolis, greets you with city sounds, people chattering, traffic driving by, music from a radio approaching and dissipating, and depending where you are, you'll get sounds of nature and waves crashing. These are all necessities, given they're trying to flesh out a lived-in world, and they succeed every time. LA Noire, being set in 1940s Los Angeles, greets you with the sounds you would expect to hear in 1940s Los Angeles: old-timey car horns and musical stings to set the tone for the narrative. And Red Dead Redemption, being the western version of GTA, blankets you in sounds of the Old West: tumbleweeds, distant gunshots, along with the clip-clops of your horse's hooves, all combined to make you really feel like Spider-Man. The reason why Rockstar is such a behemoth in the gaming industry is because of their ability to sell these experiences both literally and metaphorically. They make a lot of money. You always know you're getting a high-polished product with every attention to detail realized, and I think they've earned their place on that throne. So this last game I'm going to talk about is a very old one, but I think it still stands as a great example of excellent sound design. Super Mario World on the SNES. Even though the game is almost 30 years old at this point, it still holds the crown for making every action count with an audible cherry on top. An action as simple as jumping on a string of enemies gets you a gradual, higher-pitched ping that ends with a life-up sound if you hit enough enemies. A spin jump graces your ears with what almost sounds like somebody rolling their R's. I don't know how else to explain it, but you know what I mean if you've heard it before. And hopping on Yoshi's back adds a nice little bongo beat to the level's theme song. Every little sound effect in this game is perfect, and Koji Kondo's work is a gift to us all. Each overworld has a theme song that matches the tone, and jumping into a level is an audible treat from start to finish, up until you hit the goal and you hear the most satisfying completion theme in gaming. Even though walking through a door sounds like somebody ripping ass, it's still a delight. This is the epitome of sound design perfection, and it still holds up nearly 3 decades later. And just to go off the script for a second, I feel like doing research for this video made me appreciate sound design a lot more, because I think that most of us, when we play a game, we appreciate it with our ocular balls, but never with our audible holes, if that makes sense. I mean, you hear a tune or some kind of audible zinger in passing, and you immediately know it's from that game. Or maybe you don't, but it's ingrained in your hippocampus. That's the part of your brain that controls memory. I bet you weren't expecting coming here to learn something. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great day. Take care of yourself. Be safe out there. It's crazy times we're living in. But yeah, we'll see you guys later. Hello, Italy. Listen, guys, this off-white, off-brown diaper color you guys got going on, it's not gonna work, okay? I'm here to paint this thing free of charge. Well, I'm gonna charge you guys $60 each, but we'll deal with that later. I mean, you guys like waking up every morning and looking at this thing the way it is now? Okay, I'm just shooting